Uh, it's good to see you all on my screen. I have to admit, I kind of missed the Gatha on opening the sutra. It gives us an opportunity to mix our voices. And in fact, our voices continue to mix during the Dharma talk as we all share our precious lives together. I was thinking recently about intimacy, which is one of those phrases that anyone who has spent any time in Dharma circles hears over and over again. And it can be kind of infuriating because sometimes we think, wow, I know this is really important in some way. But what the hell does it mean to be intimate? And of course, the paradox is we can't know what it is to be intimate because if we analyze it and say being intimate is A, B, and C, then we're in a different state of mind. We're in our analytic state of mind, which is a wonderful state of mind. It's a really important state of mind. Thanks to the analytic state of mind, we know that it's a good idea to wear masks and keep social distance. We find out many interesting and useful things when we think about and analyze our world. The trouble is we can get stuck in that state of mind and lose sight of the fact that there's another perspective which is equally important and indeed is not separate in its nature from the analytic state of mind. Both are pure expressions of the Buddha Dharma. But to indicate the limitations of the analytic state of mind, I'll share with you something that happened to me this week when I was reading a newspaper story. And basically, the story was comparing the flu epidemic of 1919 to what's going on today with COVID. And it says that, in terms of, if you compare them, the flu epidemic was much worse. About 600,000 people, Americans, died during the flu epidemic. And proportionally to the population, that would be equal to 2 million people dying today as a percentage of the population. And that's good information to have. And of course, the COVID epidemic hasn't run its course yet. But I was startled to find I was a bit irritated at this kind of analysis because certainly 2 million people, when you throw these numbers around, you lose sight of the fact that each and every one of these people was someone's son or daughter, fathers, grandfathers. Each one of them meant something to a whole network of people and to us as their successors. And when we're in this sort of non-analytic frame of mind, what we might call a more intimate frame of mind of just allowing the space to be with the reality. We realize that the passing of even one person is a tragedy. You can't completely beyond the comparison of numbers of casualties. One life cannot be equal, less than, or more than another life. Each life is exactly the manifestation of human life that it is, and is irreplaceable and will never be seen or repeated again. Each life is a miracle, and when that life passes, each life is a loss that cannot be compared or estimated. It's a different way of seeing things. And I thought of this in terms of something that many of you have experienced if you come to Village Zendo summer retreats. During, it's our tradition during the summer retreat to memorialize the bombing of Hiroshima that took place on August 8th, I believe, 75 years ago. And again, you read historical arguments and they inspire in me the same kind of impatience. Did Truman make the right decision? And on one hand, people will say, well, if he hadn't made that decision and the war had gone on a year or two longer, many more people would have died than died at Hiroshima. That's one way of looking at it. And the other way is he unleashed a horror on the world that had never been seen before, and we're all living with the consequences of that. That's another way of looking at it. But during our retreats in August, we don't have that kind of argument about Hiroshima. What we do is we pause in our day and we have a service. We light incense. Roshi offers a poem. She's been doing that for many, many years. And we chant the Me Juku Kanangyo. So we don't analyze that history. We make a space for it in the present moment. And we see what arises in the present moment. And during some of those services, I find tears running down my face. Other years, I just have a headache or feel mildly depressed. But whatever it is, my being is arising in that moment and intersecting, as it does in fact, with the history of all war, all suffering, and most particularly in that case, the 100,000 or more who died on that day in Hiroshima at the hands of the American forces. Just open myself to that. I could even be intimate with Harry Truman and go, wow, I mean, 30 years before, here's this guy selling hats in Independence, Missouri, and now he's making decisions that affect the lives and deaths of millions and millions of people around the world. What must that have been like? So we can see that analysis, though useful, is woefully incomplete if that's all we're doing. We can't analyze and find out whether we're in love with someone. We can't analyze and find out how to respond to what's going on in the world, both in terms of the epidemic, in terms of racism and the protest against racism and white supremacy. That's an ongoing karma that we must open ourselves to. And none of it is going to be solved by analysis. And yet analysis is absolutely indispensable. It's not an either or kind of thing. And of course, in our practice, we run into the limitations of analysis all the time because, all of us want to get analytic with our practice. Am I getting closer to it, whatever it is, to enlightenment, to, I don't know, to the polka dotted elephant? Where am I in my practice? During zazen, we analyze the state we're in frequently, and I'm peaceful. Yes, I'm getting closer to it. Oh my God, I'm full of anxiety, and my mind is going at 100 miles an hour here. I'm far, far away from it. But of course, this is just all analysis. And our practice is simply to be intimate with our practice moment by moment. In our zazen, we notice our thoughts as they're arising. We notice analysis taking place. Not that analysis is bad, but we notice, okay, there's analysis, there's a thought. We let it go, and we come back, and we're here. There's a white wall in front of us, or a computer screen in front of us, and our lives in that time, in that moment of being here, is connected with the intersection of all beings, through the lives of all beings throughout space and time, because all beings brought us to this moment, and what we do in our lives will impact all beings to come. So we sit at the intersection of all space and time, but it doesn't feel very impressive. It just looks like a computer screen, like a wall. We can't separate ourselves from it and analyze it and say, okay, yes, this is good. I'm making progress here. So we have our practice, which takes place in time. We start out in year one, and we practice year after year, and we notice changes taking place, and we notice our hair growing gray or ceasing to exist at all in some cases. We notice that we relate to the world differently than we did when we started practicing. And we feel that practice has enriched our lives. So in that sense, of course, there is a progression through time. But that is just one perspective. The other perspective is, if I am intimate with this moment, I am intimate with Shakyamuni Buddha. I am intimate with all the Buddhas and ancestors. I am intimate with Harry Truman and the people who died in Hiroshima. In this moment, I am intimate at all, and it looks like a computer screen or a white wall. It's just being here and having my life arise and pass away with all beings, moment by moment by moment. And so from that perspective, the Bodhi mind, the way-seeking mind, if someone on his first day sitting on a cushion is intimate with his way-seeking mind, he is no less advanced or more advanced than someone who's been practicing for 40 years and is sitting on a cushion and is intimate with his own way-seeking mind. Are they the same? Are they different? Yeah. Actually, it's kind of indistinct. Actually, the difference between intimacy and analysis becomes blurrier and blurrier and not so clear. Yes, there are teachers and there are beginners. And yes, the intimacy of a teacher cannot be said to be more advanced than the intimacy of a beginner on his first day. So the business of intimacy, of just making space for this moment, for this breath, for this pain in the heart, for this ache in the legs, for this bird to sing, whatever. Just being here with it all. That is something that, whether we're Zen people or not, we need to practice. But it is true that our tendency to want to know where we are, who we are, and where we stand in the great Olympics of enlightenment, that can obscure our natural understanding, our natural ability to be here with everyone. There's a koan about an analytic fellow who had himself gently corrected by a teacher, and the analytic fellow was Officer Liu Gang. And I get the impression when I read this koan that he was kind of a dharma shopper, going around from teacher to teacher, collecting wise sayings, thinking that, it's about having the teacher say the right thing, and then you get it, and you're enlightened. So Officer Liu Gang said to Nanchuan, I was over at Sang Shao's place the other day, and he said, heaven and earth have the same root. Myriad beings are one body. Isn't that wonderful? And Nanchuan pointed to a flower in the garden and said, people these days see that peony as in a dream. So, what was he trying to show Officer Liu Gang? Uh, was he saying, well, if you wouldn't hang on to all these wise teachings, you'd be more enlightened? I don't think so. I think he was just saying, look at that flower. Look at it. Look at that flower. Make space for it. Here we are. Look. Look. If you want to see what Master Zhang Shao was talking about, look at that flower. If you want to see what Shakyamuni was demonstrating when he held up the flower on Mount Gudakutra, look at that flower. Look at it. So I think all of us, as we practice over the years, we find that more and more we're able to make this kind of space, make space and allow the dharma to be transmitted to us, not just in terms of teachings and philosophy, but in terms of the cashier at the local market, in terms of the car that won't start, in terms of the child's laughter and the bird's call. And what a feeling of profound liberation it is to discover what it is to be intimate with our lives and the intimate with the lives of all beings. So much space, so much freedom. How wonderful. Of course, I always wonder, well, what about people who don't practice Zen? What about them? Well, of course, it's not necessary to practice Zen to discover intimacy. There are many ways of being intimate with the world, many practices, arts, crafts, music, singing, dancing. This is just our way in Zen. But my attention was drawn to a very intimate expression by a poet recently. Some of you might know that one of our local people was awarded the Nobel Prize for poetry about 2 weeks ago. A poet named Louise Glick. Now, I'm not really a poetry guy, so I had never heard of her until she won the Nobel. But she had won all the big American prizes, was a very well-known poet, and then she won the Nobel Prize. And I felt a little local pride that a Long Island woman had received this great honor, and I became curious, well, what's, I looked up some of her poems online, and I found one that I thought really captured beautifully what it is that Officer Liu Gang was unable to do, what it is to truly be intimate with the flower of this moment. And so in concluding, I'd like to share this poem with you. It's called The Red Poppy. And it goes like this. The great thing is not having a mind. Feelings, oh, I have those. They govern me. I have a Lord in heaven called the Sun, and open for him, showing him the fire of my own heart, fire like his presence. What could such glory be if not a heart? Oh, my brothers and sisters, were you like me once long ago, before you were human? Did you permit yourselves to open once, who would never open again? Because in truth, I am speaking now the way you do. I speak because I am shattered. So who's narrating this poem? A red poppy, a Nobel Prize winning poet, a flower, a human being? What is it to be shattered by getting trapped in our analytic minds? We feel shattered and cut off from our lives, not because our analytic minds are bad, but in order to analyze things, you have to separate yourselves, ourselves, from them. So we really need some kind of practice, whether it's contemplating through words, as in poetry, or doing zazen, or something else. We need something to bring us back, to bind us back to our lives, and the truth that our lives are always arising with the lives of all beings throughout space and time. And that everything we do matters, everything we feel matters. Our life not only matters, but is incomparable. Our life is the life of Buddha.